Hey there folks, Mr. Scoble here with a video explaining how to do background information for both your novel evidence and your critical source evidence. So most of you are used to doing this for your novel evidence, so it's kind of a review, but also to show you how to do this with some of your critical source evidence. So what you have right now is your outline. And so now that you have your outline and your evidence and organized in the manner that you want it to have, you're now going to add context for the reader before each of those quotes. So what the background information for your research and for your novel, it should be 2 to 3 sentences. This is both for the novel and for your critical source quotes. So make sure you're providing the context for both. 2, it provides the background information that you need. It doesn't need to do a summary of the entire article. It doesn't need to do a summary of the entire character. So it just is giving you a sense of what's happening in the moment of the evidence. And the 4th, it has some sort of lead-in for the quote that completes a full sentence that makes it one thought. So some examples I'm going to show you of these. But before we get into that, some background information, what you should ask for yourself is the who, the what, the when, and the where are things that you should include for the context for the novel and for the critical source quote. They both use the same background information structure. So what I've highlighted here are the who, the what, the when, and the where. So during the break-in of the wine cask, when is this happening? Saint Antoine, where is it happening? The peasant, or who is it concerning? And the behavior becomes increasingly desperate is the what is happening in the evidence prior to showing it. So this is an example of what you should ask yourself. You don't need to include all of these pieces of information, but you should include some of these. What follows will be many, many examples. I'm not going to touch on all of them, but after this video, you can peruse these at your leisure. So here's one example of a thesis statement, background information in the quote. It does the same things I just showed you. That it has Lucy, it has the dance and the event, it has where it's happening, and it has what's going on. Same thing here. It asks the who, the what, the where, and the when. It doesn't summarize the entire story. It just deals with Madame Defarge in that piece of evidence. And a final example you can read. What you can use for background information for the quote, you can introduce the author in the context prior to the evidence. So there are 2 options here for this critical source quote by Sanders on page 24. So you see the quote down the bottom. So the background information can be both the first example, with revolutionaries perpetuating violence during the storming of the Bastille, Madame Defarge emerges as one of the key revolutionary figures who consistently resorts to violence. Madame Defarge's violent actions are directed at the oppressive aristocracy in order to achieve revenge. Her, Madame Defarge, unremitting thirst for vengeance, expressed in Dickens' own view, rest of the quote. So that's one piece of evidence using the background information I just read. It has the who, it has the what's going on, it has where are we at in the story a bit with the storming of the Bastille. Or you can also do Sanders as an author being introduced. So Sanders further explores how Madame Defarge emerges as one of the key revolutionary figures who consistently resorts to violence. And it continues on, giving context to the critical source quote. A lot of the questions that come up is exactly this. It's the same structure of background information for a critical source quote as you would do for a novel quote. It's just you have maybe an author that you want to introduce. So this is one way you can use background information for your critical source quote. Lead-ins, a lot of you have good practice with lead-ins. So it includes, again, context, any background information we need. The second bullet point here, it includes the speaker for novel quotes. And so the next slide will show you some dialogue tags that you can use. And it must connect the context and the background information you just provided to make a complete thought, a complete sentence. Use brackets at the end of the quote, and I'll show you an example of that. Here are some examples of dialogue tags. So exclaim, suggest, affirms, nervously questions. All of these are simple phrases to help say something more than just the character says, or states. These are better uses of dialogue tags. And then the final slide here is showing you how to make a lead-in flow right into the piece of evidence. So we have the mob choose a Clyde to set an example for all of the spies and to show their disapproval for the job. These citizens living in an uncertain time in London focus the hatred, jealousy, and rage in the community and transfer them to a scapegoat who exists in a relationship of differentiation within the community. The scapegoat is blamed for the ills of the community and it's ritually sacrificed for a cure. What has happened here is that it's not the start of the quote. So the ellipses bracketed demonstrates that it's not the start of the quote. And then the quote here is bracketed and transfers them to a scapegoat. So grammatically, it's now in present tense, and it also specifies the scapegoat there. So that's what is being used in this revision of the brackets. So most of you are used to using that for novel quotes, and now you're just using that for critical source quotes. Let me know if you have any questions along the way, and take care.